For those of you approaching sub 20 or want to get sub 20 in the future, honestly, just practice is not what I'm about to tell you. Here are my top 5 tips. Number 1, have muscle memory for everything. Okay, let's take a look at these two F2L cases. So both of them have the cross done and we have this corner right here, and the corresponding edge is over here and over here. So they're at 2 different spots, and normally in intuitive F2L you would treat these the same. You would say hide the corner, put the edge with it, and unhide the corner to pair them up. And then for this case, same thing, you would just hide it, move the edge over by a different amount, and then unhide the corner. However, at this level, you should be able to start thinking about them as different cases and execute them by muscle memory as you would for, say, last layer cases. So for this one, as soon as you see it, you should not have to think about where the edge needs to go or anything along the intuitive side. You should just think of it as a case. That way you can execute it very quickly using only your muscle memory. And the same idea applies to your last layer. So here we have a U-perm, and the U-perm should be in your muscle memory. You should no longer have to think about, okay, so here we go, all left hand except for these two, both turn with the right hand, and then all left hand afterwards. That's something I used to think about to help me memorize the algorithm, but at this level, you shouldn't have to do that anymore. It should all be in your muscle memory. Number 2, don't look at your current pair. Okay, so I have an entire video on F2L look ahead, but one of the most important points to have good look ahead is to make sure you don't look at your current pair. So while you're solving this one into the back here, you want to make sure that you're looking at the other pieces instead of looking at this piece. So if you had only looked at the pair you were doing, now you would find this corner and these two, but then you wouldn't have seen this one. But then if you were looking at the other pieces while solving this pair, then you will see it, and then this is probably the easiest one to go on to next. And then meanwhile, I'm looking ahead to these. If you watch any high-level cubers do example solves, they will always talk about their next pair before inserting the current pair because they've seen it by then. Number 3, learn to insert into the back slot. When you do intuitive F2L, you normally face the slot that you're about to insert into. And that can be a bad habit once you get more advanced and you need to do it in a faster way. So let's say you had just inserted this slot into the front as usual. Then next you have this. You shouldn't have to rotate all the way to this side just to do L and U moves to insert it, because from the other side you can just do R and U moves, which is also okay. So here you would just do it like this. So you have to know how to do all of your cases from the back slot as well. Yes, this includes really dumb cases going into the back like this. And yes, it also includes using your left hand. You must be able to use both your hands approximately equally during F2L. So like this. So make sure you have a good algorithm for that. Otherwise it will be impossible to mirror it to the back. Number 4, take pieces out of slots the smart way. So most of the time your F2L cases will not have both the corner and the edge in the top layer. Normally they'll have at least one of them inside some of the slots somewhere. So when this happens, you have to make sure you don't do extra moves. Let me give you an example. Here's a corner and here's an edge. Now you want to insert them into here, which is not going to happen right away because they both need to be in the top layer first of all. So if you just take out the edge, which reduces the problem a little bit, you have a regular case here. But what you want to do instead is anytime you take out an edge or take out a corner, you want to make sure that they pair together in a way that so you can insert it in 3 moves. So for this specific case, you have to take it out like this, which is more efficient, and that way you can insert it into the back here in 3 moves like that. Okay, here let's look at another example. So here we have this corner and the corresponding edge is over here. Again, we don't want to take it out in some random way like this, which means you'll have to do another few moves to pair it up. Instead, we want to take it out like this, which pairs it up. But that isn't the only way. Additionally, you could take it out like this. And what you should do is experiment with all the different ways that you could do this. So some of these efficient ways to pair pieces are really non-intuitive, and it's hard to find unless you go find it by chance or by seeing example solves. So I will just show a few here. This edge in here like this with these 2 stickers non-matching, then this one's pointing up and you just do a sledgehammer and it pairs them up like that. Then you can just insert. And then for this case, when you have a flipped edge and this one's pointing upwards again, you can just do sledgehammer and that pairs them up like that. Now this doesn't only apply to corner in the top layer, edge in the middle layer, it also applies to having an edge in the top layer and corner in the bottom layer. So make sure you have a way that you can pair them in 3 moves, then you can insert it more efficiently, rather than taking it out in some random way and then having to redo the pairing afterwards. Number 5, U-turns are better than cube rotations. Now this tip is to reduce cube rotations because obviously U-turns are much faster than rotating the entire cube. This actually applies to both F2L and last layer, but especially last layer. So let me start with that. So normally when you have the L here, then you'll do something like this to do 2 look OLL. But if you got the L from this angle instead, it's important not to do a cube rotation and instead just do a U move. And then you can just go into what you regularly do. However, I mostly see this from people in PLL. So for example, here you know the PLL, and what people tend to do is line up the blocks like that and then do a cube rotation to start the PLL. Now instead what you should do is don't worry about lining up the blocks, instead line it up to your hand so that you can execute the algorithm and then line it up afterwards. That way you completely eliminate the cube rotation. So let's take a look at an F2L example. So here, after inserting a slot, you completely don't know what you're going to do next because you're not sure what any of the pieces are. Instead of doing a cube rotation, chances are you can find a certain piece just by turning the U layer. So here I found one, here I found another one, and it goes with the edge here. But here, after finding this one, I could do one cube rotation and find the corresponding piece, rather than not knowing which way to turn and then just turning randomly before I find all of the pieces. Make sure you do U-turns. Chances are you'll find your pieces like that. And before we end off this video, I want you to think about something. 60 moves in 20 seconds. That's 3 turns per second at a constant rate. But you can definitely go faster in last layer, so that means you are allowed to go maybe even as slow as 2 turns per second during F2L. If you put your mind to it, with a lot of practice, do you think you could accomplish that? Now here's another thought. If you had terrible recognition time and spent half of your entire solve recognizing cases and spent the other half going at about 6 turns per second, you could average 20 seconds. With enough practice, do you think you could accomplish that? Thanks for watching, and I wish you good luck in your improvement. Please subscribe or come back in the near future for a video on how to be sub 15. See you next time.